Hey guys, Jason Stryker with Stryker Customs. Today's video is an installation of the CVF Racing Kit. You see this beautiful thing right here on this 455 Oldsmobile engine I got. And it's going to be a step-by-step video on everything to put this together properly. There is one part that I made a little mistake on in the video, and it's kind of an Easter egg. We'll see if anyone catches it. I did talk about it correctly, so I gave the right information, but then when I put it together, I did miss one step, and it's a pretty major one. I did fix it. It's correct right now, but something to look out for. Put it in the comments if you find what it is, or private message me or something. All right. I hope you enjoy. Okay. So we are installing a CVF racing kit. At this point, you should already have your engine torn down to approximately what this 403 is. That means all of your pulleys, V-belts, everything has been removed. Your water pump's been removed. The timing chain cover, which is going to look like this, should be removed. That goes on top of here. The harmonic balancer should be removed. That looks like this guy. And at this point, if you don't have a new timing chain, that's a double roller timing chain, this would be a perfect time to do the timing chain. I'll do another video on that at some point. The way you can tell if it's a double roller timing chain, that's going to look something like this. Once you've done the timing chain or confirm that it's good, and you put your timing chain cover back on with new gaskets and a new seal here, then it's going to look something like that. Then you're going to install a new water pump. This is a Gates 43-100. It's 6 inches tall from this mounting flange here to where the pulleys are going to mount. So they do make other ones that are shorter than that. If you have that one, then they do sell a different CVF kit, just has different spacers. These bolts, the 5/16 bolts, they're gonna look like these, are not going to be reused, but the small bolts that go in the little holes on the top here and on the bottom, those ones will be reused. So you put the new water pump on with a new gasket and RTV silicone. And so we're going to use something like this ultra gray. The next thing we're going to do is find these 4 spacers. There's 3 that are long, 1 that's short. Those are going to be oriented on the water pump to where the ones that are shorter down are going to get the long spacers, and the short spacer is going to go on the one that has the raised boss. So once you have that set up, you're going to have 4 of these 5/16 bolts. These are 4-inch, I believe, long, 4.5-inch long, and they're going to get torqued to 37 foot-pounds of torque. You want to put all of these bolts in with the spacers into your plate. And it's going to look like this. They go into the ones that have a recessed hole. So these. Once you have those on, you're going to put your spacers on the back side. The short one goes on this bottom, I would say the passenger side one. Once you get all those in, You're actually, I'm missing one step here. I like to clean out the threads first with a 5/16 18 tap and like a pick tool to get the gunk out, and also like a little brush tool. So once you pull these bolts out, you're gonna put the tap in and run it in until those threads are nice and clean. Once those are nice and clean, you get all the gunk out. You can see how much stuff comes out. Even if you have a freshly rebuilt engine, there's a chance that it still has like the original silicone or something like that from the original water pump. So you really want to get all that gunk out. You don't want to have a whole bunch of extra stuff inside there. And you want the bolts to be able to sit all the way in. So get those nice and clean, removing all the gunk. Then you're going to take your RTV silicone gasket, and you're going to fill these holes slightly up, enough that it's going to seal on the bolt and on the hole. Now, the bolts are going to go in. You may want to have somebody help you with this first part. You're going to take a 1/4 inch Allen and either some kind of a ratchet or a torque wrench. So once you get it all seated properly, you're going to want to use a torque wrench on it. You want to do little bits at a time. I'm not putting the RTV on it this time because it's going to be coming off of this and going on this coach. All right. Once you have those torqued to the 37 foot-pounds of torque, then you're going to move on to the next step, which is the alternator. Now with the alternator, you can take the pulley off at the beginning. So this comes with a V-belt pulley on it and like a pressed fan. Those are going to be removed and discarded. You're not going to be using those. But they do recommend leaving the pulleys off until you put the belt on. So I'm not going to be putting that pulley on yet, but I will show you what those are going to look like. This is the fan that's going to be going on. First thing to note, there is a spacer here, and you want to make sure that is in there. Otherwise, it can damage the pulleys. So once you've got that in, you're going to install with the fan first, and then the pulley, and it has a little uh, piece standing out there. That's going to go into the little notch. And then you've got a lock washer and a nut. One thing to note on this is that there are other pulleys. So this is what they call an underdrive pulley. You can see it's smaller. Um, it's the diameter is slightly smaller. That gives it a little bit more output. So if your coach is having problems with charging, if it's just not keeping up, then that will add about 20 amps. I don't necessarily recommend it up front. I would probably make sure it works first, and then if you want to go to an underdrive pulley, you can do that as an add-on later. Just most of the time, the 140 amps that it has is already 40 amps higher than what your coach probably has now, and it's going to be plenty for what you're going to be doing. So my recommendation, leave all the pulleys off the alternator until the belts go on. You're going to have 2 bolts and a nut. One is a M8 by 25. That is going to go up on the top here. And then you're going to have a 3/8 16 that is 2 3/4 inches long. That's going to go on the bottom. If you look at the alternator, you've got one that's a threaded hole up top, and then on the bottom it has just a hole for this one to go in. So the M8 bolt's going to go top, and the longer bolt with the nut on the back is going to go on the bottom. They do say to have the CVF logo on the outboard side of the engine, that's towards your driver fender. If you have to rotate the casing at all for the power output, it is possible to do that if you use a 1/4 inch socket on these 3 bolts. You can take those out. You leave this back part in, but you can rotate it to one of the other 3 positions. I've never had to do that. It's always been routed fine for my application, but they do mention that in the instructions. It is an 11 mm wrench for the nut on the post for the positive. And these are a single wire alternator. So even though it shows a little plug here, this is not used. It's only the one power wire, and then they do ask you to have a ground wire on it, so a dedicated ground. All right. So the best way to install this, probably to start the M8 bolt. That way it's kind of hanging there. And then you can put in bottom, put the nut on, and for the um, M8 bolt, it's going to be a 6 mm socket or Allen key. So you can tighten that up. That one is going to get torque to 31 foot-pounds of torque. M8 25. Yep. All right. And then the bottom one, which looks like it might be a bigger Allen. Check that. Yeah. So the bottom one is going to take a 5/16 Allen. And you can either put a wrench on the backside, or you can use like torque wrench to do it, but it's going to be a 9/16 for the nut. And that one's going to get torqued to, see what it says. 44 foot-pounds of torque. So I'm not going to torque everything in this video just because I'm going to be taking it back apart. I do recommend putting some medium strength Loctite on the bolts. If it's a lock nut, like on the back of the alternator, you don't have to put it on that one. Um, and you don't have to put it on the ones that are going to have the RTV on them. But any of the other ones that get threaded into something, this is just a stick version of it. They make the drip ones too. But putting a little bit of that on everything just keeps it from rattling out. I wouldn't go with high strength because then you'll never get it apart. But the medium strength is a good idea. All right. So once you have the alternator installed, you can go to the AC compressor. This is going to get two M8 by 25mm bolts. They're going to look like this. So there's the same top and bottom. I like to get them both started before I tighten either of them down. That way you don't cross thread them or I'm screwed up. Let's see. I don't know if I mentioned the orientation in this, but it has a cover on the top that with a plate, and it's got two bolts. Eventually that cover is going to come off and this piece is going to go in its place. This has the two hose outputs for the low side and the high side. This compressor does come with 4.75 ounces of PAG 100 oil for the AC. You may have to add more for your system. I'm not an AC tech. I have somebody do the AC stuff so they can get it all proper. So, check with your AC people when you do that. But I'm not going to be taking that plate off for this video because I want to keep it all sealed until this thing's fully installed and ready to have the air conditioning done. There's also a decorative cover that can wait. I don't put any of the decorative covers on until the very end. So I'll just be leaving all those off. All right. So these should be a 6mm for both of these bolts, so for a 6mm Allen, just like this one was. So again, get it snug. And this one's going to be torqued to 31 foot-pounds of torque. I like to get them both to where they're just finger tight before I put any torque on them. All right. Okay, the next part is going to be the tensioner. So you've got the tensioner. You can see the 1/2-inch square. That's for releasing the tension off of it. And occasionally, not very often, but occasionally, you may need a spacer, a shim plate that can go on this backside. That's something that if you need it, you contact CVF and they should send you one of those. They sent me ones for free. They probably won't charge you for that. The bolt for this is a 3/8 bolt, coarse thread, so 16, and it has a lock nut. And this one is, let's see where it's at on here, 3-inch long bolt, and it's going to be torqued to 44 foot-pounds of torque. So I'm going to put it on in this spot down here without the spacer or shim plate, and it's going to go something like this. Bolt is going to go in. It is threaded on the backside. This would be another spot you could put the thread locker in if you'd like, but you are going to have a lock nut on the backside. This one is going to take What size that is? I think it is. Size that. Grab a tool here. All right. This is going to be a 7/32. All right. And then once that's tightened down, put the lock nut on the back. And while holding the torque on this is going to be another one at 44 foot-pounds of torque. You can tighten down the lock nut also to 44 foot-pounds of torque. All right. This one also has a decorative cover. Again, all decorative covers are going to wait till the end, so we're not going to put that on right now. Also, when this decorative cover is on, you can't access the release. So I don't even like to put this on in my own coach. It's more decorative than anything. So like if I have to change a belt out, I want to be able to access this, but it is a pretty cover. All right. Next part is going to be this spacer for the harmonic balancer. And this has four 5/16 by 18 or 18 threads, 3-inch bolts. They're going to be torqued to 37 foot-pounds. So if you're reusing your torque or your harmonic balancer, you're going to want to chase those threads. But you should be putting a new harmonic balancer in because they're cheap enough that it's not worth putting a new or an old one back on. The bolts are going to go into the recessed holes. The ones that have the threads right at the edge are going to be for the pulley. So they're going to go in like this. They stick out the back just a little bit. Again, thread locker is a good idea for this. Also, you can see it's got a piece that sticks out on the outside. On the inside, it's recessed slightly. There is a little nub on the harmonic balancer. You want to get all of those just hand tightened at first. And these are 1/4 inch Allen. And I believe these are torques of 37 foot-pounds of torque. Again, finger tight until you get all of them in. You just want to make sure this isn't wobbly. You don't want it offset. It shouldn't be because the harmonic balancer should keep it centered. All right. Close down. All right. Next, you're going to have the pulley. This has four 3/8 16 1-inch bolts that are going to get torqued to 44 foot-pounds of torque. They look like this. They're going to go in these holes. Again, it's got a decorative cover. We leave that off because you want to be able to crank the engine over by hand with a socket. All right. Also, again, you want to do a thread locker on these. Let's see. and that's a 5/16 Allen. There we go. And again, you want to go finger tight for the most part on these until they're all mostly seated, and then tighten them all down. And the torque on those is going to be 44 foot-pounds of torque. All right. Next is you're going to have the power steering pump. There's several different options for this. I'm only going to talk about the GM Type 2. That's what we've been putting on all of them. They do have a Saginaw version, which I've never installed one of those, but it is an option. If you wanted that, then it is something you do. And they have a power steering pump set up for Hydro Boost. I haven't done one of those. I think one of our customers have done it at one point, but I don't have any experience with it. This one that I'm holding here, you can see it's got two AN fittings. It's got an AN10. This is the return line. So this is coming from the reservoir. This one is set up to have a remote reservoir. I actually prefer to have the mounted reservoir, and I'm going to show you that one in a second. But I'm going to show you both versions. So the big line that's coming back, that's the low pressure. The small line, that one's going to be pointing straight up, and that's going to be your high pressure going to the power steering gearbox. After it comes out of the gearbox, if you're continuing to use the hydraulic power window wipers, then it's going to go to that. And then from the window wipers, it's going to go back to the reservoir and then back to this. So this is going to have, actually, before I put that on, I'm going to show you the other version. This is one with a mounted reservoir. So if you do the mounted reservoir, it's going to look something like this. And then you just run a 3/8 hose back from either your window wiper motor or just straight from the um, power steering gearbox. And then off of this, you're just going to run like a 90-degree fitting off. So Um, unlike on our original setup, you can actually get to this without like as much interference with the belt. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but like the original power steering was in here and you almost had to like touch the belts if you're running it while you're adding fluid and stuff to it. So it wasn't a design that I liked. So, but I do like this setup with the reservoir on it because the mounting spots for the reservoir and the reservoir that they have isn't really my favorite. So this is my preference. All right. So the two bolts that you're going to use for this are two M8 by 40 millimeter bolts, and they're going to get torqued to 31 foot-pounds. These are similar to the other ones, except they're a little bit longer. They have the non-threaded part here. So these are going to go through from the outside and catch in here. And that should be the 6 millimeter Allen. Again, thread locker is a good idea, and just finger tight until you get them both snugged up, just so it doesn't tweak it or anything. And if you have any problems doing them hand tight until they're most of the way in, using a tap on them is a good idea. It's easy to get these bolts mixed up with the one on the AC compressor and on the alternator, the top bolt of the alternator. So make sure you got the short ones in those two and the long ones in the power steering. Okay. All right. So next is going to be the pulley for it. And this one has four 5/16 by 24 that are 5/8 inch long, and they get torqued to 27 foot-pounds. And these should take a 3/16 Allen. That's going to look like that. They're going to go into this pulley. So that is going to go on here. Again, thread locker and finger tight until you got them all in. Right. And those are 27 foot-pounds of torque. These ones might be easier to torque down when you have the belt on, so it keeps the pulley from spinning. All right. Next, you're going to have the water pump pulley. One thing to note on this is there are spacer shims. And if you are going to run a mechanical fan, which we don't really do on anything anymore because we're running electric fans, if you're going to run the mechanical fan, I believe you have to have a spacer, something like this. So put the opposite side. You may have to use shim plates on the back of it to get the pulley to sit just right. We usually end up having to put about one of these in. I've occasionally seen it maybe take two. It just depends on a few factors. But you'll check all of that when everything is kind of mostly assembled. You want to take a straight edge, something like this, and put it across pulleys and see, you know, how they all sit. And you can measure off of the plate to see if it's all in alignment or not. So I'm going to leave these off for right now, but if you did put them in, they get put in like this, and you're just going to align the holes, and then you put the pulley on over the top of it. It's probably easiest to actually put it in on the back side. Yeah, something like that, so that all the holes match up, and then you can put them in a little easier without dropping the spacer. So these are um, find my Allen key. Okay, these are 3/16. Put it on, and the little post in the center to get it in alignment, and then you can line up the holes and stick them in. I would leave the thread locker off of this until you get all the alignment proper, just because if you have to pull it back off to align it, then it's easier if you don't put the thread locker on. I believe my kit came with another cell. I just set it aside. That was this, which is kind of a decorative cover and the bolts all in one. I don't know if that's just like two different options or what the reasoning is behind that, but theoretically you could have that, and that is the decorative cover as well. Although this does have a decorative cover that can go on after. All right, we got that on. The next piece is going to be your idler pulleys. So you have two of these, and it comes with two of these um, 3/8, 16, 2.5 inch bolts, and they're going to be torqued to 31 foot-pounds of torque. And then they're going to have a washer and a lock nut on the backside. So they recommend leaving the decorative cover off of these as well, just for ease of installing the belt. These ones are a little different. When you put the cover on, it does actually act as the outside of the pulley. So if you don't have it on, it doesn't have the outside of the pulley. Um, so this is one of the few that I would recommend putting the decorative cover on, even if you don't care about the looks. So, bolt. So these has the raised part. It's going to go into this little slot. These are identical for each side. So one's going to go here, one's going to go here. And these are going to get torqued to 31 foot-pounds of torque. And then got your washer, flat washer, and nut, lock nut, lock nut. And let's see, there's the 9/16. And that. Yeah. that way. All right. Next is going to be our belt. So there's two different belts here. The one that comes in your kit should be this K080720. And that one is like 1848 millimeters long and then 28 millimeters wide. These are an 8-rib belt, probably what the 8 stands for there. But that's the one that's going to come with the bigger pulley. If you do the smaller pulley, they say you can run the same belt. I found that was a little bit loose. So we just found the next size down, which was the 16 instead of the 20. So that can be an option. All right. Now for routing, you're going to run something like this. All right. Now we are going to take alternator pulley and a 1/2-inch breaker bar. And I'm going to get ready to put this last one on. So I'm gonna release the tension here and you get it up, and they do recommend for the first install having somebody help you. Sometimes you got to put like a little bit extra pressure on it. So for this video, I think I'm going to take this one off if I can. It goes in. Okay, so we got it all on. And then once the tensioner sits, it should sit about like that. The lock washer and the nut for the alternator are going to go on. And I use an impact for this. It's a 15/16 socket. I like to use a shallow well, or not shallow well, it's a deep well, but it's a 3/8 and it's not a impact socket. And the reason for that is I believe when you go to the smaller pulley, anything bigger than the non-impact won't fit in there. For the standard one, you can use an impact socket, and that's fine. I don't know what the torque is on that. I didn't look that up, but usually just kind of hammer it in there a little bit, and I'll double check on the torque on that. So this is essentially the completed kit to runnability option. It's a good idea to kind of crank it over a few times and get this belt fully seated. And then you can start taking your tool and going on each of the pulleys and just kind of measuring how far out is from the plate on everything and seeing if there's any issues there. Sometimes we've seen the harmonic balancer be a problem. If you didn't put a new one on or something, there may be problems. Every time we've put a new harmonic balancer on, there was no issue. But sometimes reusing the old one, there was issues on that, and I don't know the reasons behind it. Um, but yeah, if you get it all good, everything seems aligned properly, then you can put all the decorative covers on it, and that's pretty much it. So actually, I am going to talk about the, this is another reservoir that could go on. So this is an aluminum reservoir. This is a plastic reservoir. So this one has threaded fittings. So that is an option. And then this is the reservoir if you do the remote setup. So it's got 3/8 NPT fittings in the bottom. The O-ring goes all the way at the base of the flange. You've got a diffuser that's going to go in the return line. That's the one coming from like the high pressure. So coming from your power steering gearbox or from the window wipers, if you have that still, if you didn't go to electric. This one, it's tapered. So you can go in either hole. So you can decide which one you're going to do. I like to mark them with like a Sharpie on the outside before I do it. That way I don't have to like look inside or whatever and see which one's supposed to be which. But you know, and before you put fluid in, it's easy to look down and go, okay, it's oriented this way or this way. You want to hammer that in so it doesn't pop out. This is going to have fluid coming out fairly quickly. So if you do not hammer it in, it is likely that the flow is going to pop it out and shoot it towards the top of the reservoir. If you don't have this in, then if you're running it and you have the cap off, it's going to be shooting fluid straight out. So definitely have that guy in there. So then this is just a canister, just a straight through aluminum piece. It's threaded the same on each side, doesn't matter which side you use. But you're going to thread that in. I would lube up the O-ring before you do it. And then you're just going to snug it down. The other side of it is going to be this cap. Before you put the cap on, you're going to want to put the bracket on it. The bracket does have two little set pins in there. I believe those are like a 5/64 Allen. Um, and then it's just got these little bolts. You don't have to use these bolts. You can use something else. But you know, finding a spot to mount this is kind of a challenge. That's one of the reasons I don't like this. The other reason I don't like it is it has a concave top and it's got a vent hole there. And what we found is if you put these in the front of the motorhome, the water, like from rain and stuff, can go down and land on this lid and then funnel its way into the fluid. The way we found to fix that is you take a straw from like a WD-40 can or something like that and get the diameter of that, get a drill bit that's the same outside diameter, and you're going to drill this hole just slightly bigger so that that straw will go in, and then put a little bit of glue so it seals it, and then just have that straw stick up maybe ½ inch proud of its surface, and then it won't have any water get inside it and it'll still vent. So, and again, it might look like the washer or the O-ring is supposed to go in this lip here, but that is for the vent hole. I can find it. There's the vent hole. So if you put the O-ring there, one, it's not going to seal it, and two, it's going to keep it from venting. So you're going to have issues there. So make sure that the O-ring sits all the way at the top. And that can go in. Again, a little bit of oil on that, power steering fluid, something like that to keep the O-ring lubed up, and that'll make it seat properly and nice. But yeah, and then once you get this set properly, you know, run those in, it will damage it possibly. So you want to make sure you have it set how you like it first, because once you crank that in, it is going to have little impressions in it. So if you're trying to keep it nice. Also, I will note we use something like this, which is a pipe sealant for those two bottom threads for the NPT threads. So it just keeps it from leaking. You could probably use Teflon tape or something like that. I've just had better luck with this than with Teflon tape. Also easier than trying to remember what direction to go and all that. So I'll also note that an AN wrench is a good idea to have for all of your AN connections, um, and that you can get a hose kit. So this is a premium power steering hose kit. I haven't opened this one yet because I don't want to lose the pieces. When we get to the point of installing the lines, I'll do a video on this and talk about all that. I'll probably also do a video on making all the air conditioning lines brand new and setting that up with our new air conditioner. All right. Thanks for watching.